Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
We can dance, everybody look at your hands. We can dance, everybody's taking the chance. Safe to dance, oh it's safe to dance. Yes, it's safe to dance.
Hello and welcome to episode 250 of the Situational Awareness Matters show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to help improve situational awareness and high-risk decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-stress, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SAMatters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. I'm coming to you today from my office in St. Paul, Minnesota. Last week I had the honor of delivering a program for the Toledo, Ohio Fire Department. This program was last Saturday, which was the 5th anniversary of a double line-of-duty death incident in Toledo that killed 2 firefighters. Thank you to Mark Briggs and the command staff of the Toledo Fire Department for hosting that program. Yesterday I interviewed Dr. Bart Clark, and we talked about assumed risk, created risk, and fire service culture. So look for that episode upcoming in a few weeks. The feature segment this week is part 2 of a 3-part interview. If you have not yet listened to part 1, you're going to want to go back and give it a listen before you listen to this segment. Do you have to? No. But it will make this segment make more sense as this episode picks up right at the point that the Mayday was called, and having some backstory will be very helpful to you. So go back and listen to episode 249 first. All right, let's jump into our feature segment, part 2 of my interview with German Township Incident Commander Deavron Farmer, complemented with contributions by longtime German Township Fire Department, now retired Chief John M. Buckman III.
And whatever you're doing is not working. It's getting worse. Let's just stop. And my intention was to get them out and say, okay, let's devise a new plan of attack, right? Because whatever you guys are doing, when you tell me you're at the seat of the fire, and I know you're not, I can tell, I'm not happy with the situation anymore.
Yeah.
So let's play the audio.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, let me ask one question. How many people were inside at this point?
Crew of 3. 3
were inside. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, John, you say play the audio some more?
Yeah. Yeah, because I've asked now, seat of the fire. I'm in communication with them, and then this happens.
Interior from command. Exit the building.
Interior, exit the building. Interior, exit the building.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Firefighters down. Mayday.
Clear, firefighters down.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Firefighters down.
How many down?
Command from 4 Adam 1. Command from 4 Adam 1. Firefighters down. Firefighters down. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Dispatch 4 Adam 1.
4 Adam 1.
Any unit that's on standby, send them to the scene.
Clear.
Dispatch, disregard 4 Adam 1 traffic. Update this to a second alarm fire.
Clear.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. I have firefighters down, trapped inside.
Central Dispatch, AM2.
Gateway traffic for dispatch.
Interior from command, exit the building now.
Whew. Man, I got some chills going on.
Rich, the hair on the back of my neck, what little I have, is standing up as well.
No,
Before Deavron,
my.
because I want to give Deavron a time for his blood pressure to come back down. Because we know every time you hear this, it goes up. But a couple things happened there. 4 Adam 1, who is responding as a neighboring chief under a mutual aid situation, requested all move-up companies to move to the scene. Then you have the assistant chief of German Township, who is coming from work, who has not heard all the traffic, who is nowhere close, and I wrote this in the report, interfered in the response and said, no, make a second alarm. Well, those closest companies, which could have responded immediately, were not immediately dispatched because you have a chief officer who's not really totally engaged in the incident, in my opinion, interfered. And it was written in the report. So it's not like I'm saying it without saying it before.
And when we come back and talk about the lessons learned, I'd like to learn a little bit more about, you know, what was learned from that. What did that person have to say? Why did they feel that was the appropriate way to contribute at that moment? We don't have to talk about that now. We can come back to it on the lessons learned, but it probably at least momentarily caused some incident confusion with that interjection of that instruction from somebody. To that point, he'd not been on the air, had he?
Correct.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I thought, unless it was cut out, I didn't hear it. Yeah. Okay.
So I think my blood pressure's down a little bit, but I still feel it. So one of the things the audio tape doesn't capture is it sounds like when you just play it straight through that I'm just constantly on the radio talking. The pauses have been taken out. And so somebody asked in a previous discussion about this, you never gave them a chance to respond, right? I was leaving some breaks in there to get some kind of answer back, just if anybody questioned that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you did say that on the front end of the interview that you guys removed all the dead spaces so that the audio would flow quicker and smoother and somebody wouldn't have to listen to all that dead air space. But it does then lead somebody to say, well, geez, this guy just kept calling Mayday and Mayday and Mayday. There was space and time for them to reply to you, and they weren't replying to you.
Well, it was 1 minute and 17 seconds.
Yeah.
From the time he first said exit the building to the time he declared a Mayday was 1 minute and 17 seconds. And
Okay.
in that time frame, that's when the explosion or backdraft occurred.
Right. And that's we're out of sequence a little bit on the storytelling, but that the whole, even today, what I could not wrap my brain around, I was just talking to you about pike poles and flashlights and the seat of the fire. We just had this conversation. I then say, we're done now. I want you out of the building, and you don't answer me. And then I call you again, and you don't answer me. I'm like, how were we just talking, a few seconds ago, and now you won't respond to me? And what happened from the timeline of me calling them saying, we're done, please come out, we're finished. And the first time I said Mayday, as John mentioned, I'm standing in the front yard on the A side. I'm 25 feet from the home, and the entire right-hand side of the A wall just completely blew out. Bricks went flying past me. The D wall totally heaved out. The walls heaved. The front door where the line was going in the front door just completely slammed shut and completely pinched off 1 3/4 inches. and the whole home just felt like the whole thing just imploded, is what it felt like.
Was that before or after you called the Mayday because you couldn't reach them?
I called the Mayday because of the backdraft.
Okay.
I'm asking them to leave in a couple requests, and I'm like, why are you not answering me? And in the process of saying, exit the building, and I think you could even hear dispatch monitoring the traffic, she set a tone out,
Right.
asking them to leave. So all of the times, there's probably 3 or 4 asking for them to exit the building, or at least acknowledge me on the radio. And at that point, it backdrafted. And that's when I said, okay, they weren't answering to begin with, and now the house just exploded. And Mayday is all I could get out of my mouth at that point.
And Deavron, he said the little secret I wanted to share with you is that the force of the backdraft slammed the front door on an 1 3/4 charged hose line and crimped it off. I have never, and I've talked to guys all over the country, nobody has ever seen that. Crimped it off. That was the force of that backdraft.
And now they have no water.
Correct.
And they're not answering.
And they're not answered. I got a couple questions for you, Deavron, and we're going to move the story along. This one comes from Facebook. It says, how many firefighters were on the scene when the Mayday was called? How many additional firefighters did you have there at that point?
Well, it probably would have been the three interior and 6 on the 7, including the pump operator on the exterior.
Okay, but the pump operator's hundreds of feet down the road, right, at the pump?
Yeah, he's 350 feet away.
Yeah. All right. Second question is, Deavron, I want to know from you, at that moment, when that backdrafted and that door slammed and pinched that line, I want to know what your stress level was like.
It's taken a year for it to come down some, but it was off the chart. It was just off the chart. And it was surreal. I couldn't. I told somebody when I talked about it with some of my friends and my wife, I said, things were they were happening almost faster than I could process them. I could not wrap my mind around the fact that I was just talking to you. Now you won't answer me. Oh, now the building just exploded. All of that happened so quick, it was almost surreal. And when I see the door slam shut and my younger brother standing there and another firefighter standing there, and the one, Brian, friend of ours, was in street clothes just helping hump hose, looks at me and says, I think we just killed 3 firefighters. And I'm like,
You said that right there, right then?
In my face. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So,
Probably not the best words of encouragement at the moment.
Yeah, I had a lot to process, and I hear him kind of whisper that in my ear. It didn't help exactly, because I mean we were all standing there. You know, my brother's only 3 years younger than me, and you know he's a career firefighter, and you know all of us looked at each other like, "What the heck was that?" I mean, it was so weird. You know, to think I've got an interior crew in and to the left, and everything that's in and to the right just exploded. You know, there was bricks flying by, there's walls heaved out, and I'm just like, and then as John pointed, you know, the front door slams shut, pinches off a charged 3 1 3/4, and I'm just like, I don't even know what to do. I just, at that point, it was startling to say the least. So
The other thing, so why they didn't answer, since we're at this point, again, we found this out during the investigation, is we have radios on the vehicle, on the engine, for everybody to have one. 2 of them, for whatever reason, did not pick up a radio. The one guy who did pick up the radio, instead of him putting it in the pocket, he attached it to the outside of the pocket. When the explosion occurred and things moved around on the inside of the structure where they were, which included door slamming, the radio dropped off of his pocket down into the debris, and well, we got a new radio. It was never found in a workable condition. So that's why they didn't answer, because at that point, Deavron's talking about Sean, and Deavron said to Sean, "Don't you dare go inside that front door." Because by then, Sean had kicked the front door off the hinges and was looking inside to find those firefighters. And then Deavron assigned Sean to go do some other stuff.
Yeah, Sean, again, Sean's, looking at me. Brian makes the comment, I think we just lost 3 guys. Sean literally kicks the hinge side off, and gets the front door. He's pulling at the line to see if these guys will come. We're yelling. I'm looking at Sean in street clothes, and I know my brother, he's processing. I'm like, don't go in there. You cannot go in there in street clothes. Absolutely not. And for a brief second, I thought he was going to, because everybody now is operating at max Q on the panic level, right? This all just happened so quickly. That's when I start the Mayday, Mayday, Mayday comment. I asked Sean, go get me another look at this thing. He goes around all the way around from the D side back to the back C side and finds another door, kicks it in, and there the 3 of them are standing there as if they were so surprised to see Sean. They're like, what are you doing here? And Sean used some colorful language to scream at them to come out. Sean gets them to come out of the building. They were unaware a backdraft had occurred. There were some unusual conditions that they attributed to maybe a ceiling fan fell, or they heard something, they weren't sure. I've got the air horns, right? We've sounded the evacuation symbol or signal. They did not hear that. With no radio, which they at the time didn't even know they lost, right? Because they're still doing the ceiling pull, radio debris, everything falls out. So Sean actually startles them when he kicks a door open to the room they happen to be in. He brings them out, and as he comes marching around the side of the building, I'm doing a head count. I'm like, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3. And he comes around to me and says, I got all 3 are out. And I wanted to, I still to this day, I wanted to just line them up, give each one a big bear hug, and then individually punch each one of them right in the face. I wanted to hurt them so bad.
I thought you said you wanted to punch him in the face first, then the bear.
I might have been the other way around.
Isn't that how we feel sometimes as parents too? Our kids, they're supposed to be home at say 11, then they don't get home till 1. First thing we want to do is hug them. Then we want to kill them for coming in so late and not telling us. And I sense what you're saying there. So I do want to pause for a moment and try to connect something that didn't quite make sense to me.
Yeah.
And that is, you said the one person had the radio clipped on the outside, but when the backdraft occurred, that it might have knocked the radio free, but yet they, by their own admission, didn't even know a backdraft had occurred. So did the radio come dislodged by some other means?
You're probably right, Rich, in that as a result, the backdraft, they knew something happened because the doors slammed shut and they heard noise. So when I said it wasn't because of the backdraft, it was just part of the backdraft, I say, event.
Okay.
We're pulling the ceilings, they get movement, they get air. I don't know which one of them contributed to the radio falling off the pocket.
Yeah.
Okay. And then at some point when that door closed, they would have lost their water supply, but if they weren't flowing their hose line at that moment, they would not have known that. So were they flowing water, and did they realize that it got pinched and they lost their water, or they just weren't flowing water?
They weren't flowing water.
They weren't,
according to the investigation.
And then by the time the door got opened back up again, the line was charged. So they were never even made aware that how much potential jeopardy they were at because of the loss of the supply of water in their line.
And the backdraft occurred on the D side. Remember, they went into A, they're operating on the B, and the actual backdraft on the the front of the building was the AD side where it blew the windows out.
Yeah.
And then the D side is where the wall was blown out.
Yeah, and because, again, after the fact, we find out that it's, 5 building additions to this home, that there was not enough connected space to where they're in the far back left corner of the house. The backdraft occurs on the far right-hand side. It was enough that they knew something happened, but it wasn't, enough pressure in that room for them to realize that something really bad happened. course, none of that we know at the time. I'm standing outside thinking I've got one building, one large home, part single story, part 2-story, and it just blew up with 3 guys inside. So that wouldn't answer me after we just had a radio traffic with them. So they were actually really startled when John runs around and kicks in the back door and grabs them and pulls them out. They were like, what? They were really surprised. And when they got around to the front side and saw the damage and how the wall had heaved out and all the windows came out, it was pretty startling to them.
One of the things that we haven't mentioned, and everybody that's listened to the audio traffic hears Deavron repeatedly say, exit the building, exit the building, exit the building. He repeatedly called Mayday, dispatch assistant in calling Mayday. And Deavron and I both have talked to a lot of people about this. We've heard from friends and some people who are not so much friends of going, wow, you lost it. When you repeatedly said, exit the building, exit the building. And I've told people, all Deavron was asking was, please answer your radio. Tell me something. Tell me you're still alive. So anybody who's never been in that position, don't be critical because somebody called Mayday or told them to exit the building multiple times until you've stood in those shoes. And I put 9 firefighters in the hospital in 1979. I've been there. I know what it's like. And we were 20 miles from a hospital. And they all went to the hospital.
If I could say something in defense of that, John, if you're the commander on the outside and you just had a backdraft and you're trying to reach your crews on the inside and they don't answer their radio, you can really essentially just make one of 2 assumptions. Assumption 1, they're not listening to their radio or, because they were just talking on the radio. So, the radio is functioning. So assumption 1, well, they're just not listening to their radio. Or assumption 2, they're now incapacitated and unable to answer their radio. And if given the choice of making one of those 2 assumptions, I think the astute incident commander would be smart to defer to the second assumption, that those crews that were just momentarily ago talking to me are now not talking to me, and let's try to understand why. And my default judgment in defense of Deavron would have been they're incapacitated. They can't talk, and that absolutely warrants the Mayday. Anybody judging that differently is judging from a third-party perspective with little knowledge of what it's like to be in that moment at that time, under that stress, and the things going through your mind to consider toward trying to bring successful outcome to rapidly changing conditions. Those people are not in a position to pass that judgment. I appreciate the fact that you acknowledge that they're out there, but we're just going to dismiss them as uninformed. Some might call it ignorant, and I mean ignorant not in a mean-spirited way, but as an uninformed person to make a judgment like that, not understanding the circumstances of the moment. It's so far off base it almost warrants an eye roll.
So you want to move into some of the lessons learned? Yeah.
Well, before we get the lessons learned, so you find them, you get them out, and then the firefight from that point is defensive for the rest of the firefight.
Yeah, for the most part, at that point, it had now contained the entire attic space over both the original home and some of the room additions. It was now clearly a structure fire, well into the structure of the home, and it just became a defensive fire. So,
okay, so the balance of the event is uneventful.
Uneventful. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of things moving at the same time. So while all of this is going on, additional people are showing up. I have additional officers. I'm thinking of Tamara who left work. Certainly when the Mayday goes out over the radio like that, it starts to bring in a lot of folks from all over. So I remember one of our officers walked up and said, "What do you need? And what can I get you?" And I said, take the radio. Tell me the important things I need to know. Keep everything else out of me. I'm trying to make decisions here. So that I would like to call Tamara out for helping with that. If you were to ever listen to the radio traffic all the way through, It changes from my voice to Tamara's voice, but I simply handed her the radio and said, "You're going to run the radio for me. I need to process here," and the radio traffic was better handed off to somebody who could just manage that for me.
Another one of the statistics, Rich, is that from the time Deavron declared the Mayday till the firefighters were found was 4 minutes and 7 seconds. So again, when we've talked about compressed time frame, the timeline, everything happening very rapidly. It all happened very, very rapidly.
Yeah. A couple of things I want to get answered before we move into the after action discussion is one, up to the point where you handed the radio off to Tamara, were you operating alone as the commander? Did you have an ops person, a safety person, a command aide, anything like that, or were you just like solo command team?
I had, by that point, we had received enough help from neighboring departments and other folks coming in from their lunch break that I did have a safety officer assigned to start doing the work. This was after we found the firefighters. So we did have a safety officer. I'm sure we had somebody in charge of water supply. As John mentioned early on, we had a neighboring chief help with water supply. He was a captain, actually, and he was our water supply officer. And then the safety officer was chief of a neighboring department, Scott Township.
Yeah, more specifically, my question is, Deavron, when you had the explosion and the Mayday, were you operating solo at that point?
Boy, I probably had the water supply officer, again, 300 feet away out in the street, coordinating traffic out there. I think the safety officer had just pulled in the driveway, or the chief that became my safety officer. I would say, looking back, I would say most of, up until the declaring the Mayday, I at least feel like, and so this is what it did, paints my memory, as that was pretty much a solo decision. I did not have the rest of the pieces in place yet. They were developing behind me, and some of that was happening with the automated move up and some of the automated trucks coming on scene from dispatch. But no, I think at the time I made the Mayday call, it was for the most part a solo command operation.
Okay, a couple more questions, and we'll move into the after action. John, you had said early on that I think it was you, may have been Deavron said it, that the first arriving crew didn't quite complete the 360. It was more like maybe a 270 or a 280, but didn't get the full 360 done as the first due. Deavron, when you became the incident commander, did you complete a 360?
Yeah, that was the first thing I did when I walked up on scene. When I got out to help pump hose and you take command, he handed me the radio, and I just immediately went up and did a 360 around the house.
Okay.
And as I'm talking to him on the radio and walking around, and honestly, the entire incident was based, I think, off my 360 decision making. I made all of my decisions about, we're not making progress, it's getting worse, and ultimately led me to my decision of leave the building, all based on that 360. While I was doing it, I'm thinking, I didn't do the 360 and then come back and 5 minutes later say, now it's time to leave. I'm asking them to leave as I'm completing the 360 for the most part.
Okay. And then the last question before we jump into the after action, did you implement any formal process to cancel the Mayday once they were out?
At best, I would think we called dispatch, and there should be in the audio tape that we called dispatch and advised all firefighters are accounted for, thereby canceling the Mayday.
Okay.
And that should be in that audio tape.
Okay.
But if the question is, did we cancel the Mayday? No, but we did declare at 12 minutes and 24 seconds into the event, firefighters found, all firefighters out and accounted for.
The Situational Awareness Matters show was launched in 2014 with a purpose to give a platform to those who've had near misses to be able to share their stories, just like the one you just heard. When I'm on the road delivering classes on situational awareness, I often ask the attendees about their near-miss events that they have had, and they have shared some amazing stories. It is those stories like Deavron's, who you just heard, that motivated me to launch this podcast so that those lessons could be shared with a bigger audience. The Situational Awareness Matters show, podcasted as SAMatters Radio, and our companion video on YouTube as SAMatters TV, along with the other videos that we have posted on YouTube, have enjoyed over 800,000 downloads. That number blows my mind and far exceeds all my expectations. So thank you for your support. I feel very honored to be able to provide this platform for these amazing stories to be shared.
Real expectations, because SA matters.
Know your limit. Know your partner's limit, because SA matters. Assumptions are bad. SA matters.
Proper PPE is important, because SA matters.
Flawed situational awareness is a really big deal. SA matters. Know your water supply, because SA matters. Bears and Cougars, SA matters. Go versus no-go, because SA matters.
Confidence is good. Overconfidence is bad. SA matters.
Buddies matter, because SA matters.
SA matters, so don't get angry.
When the pigs are eating lemons, SA matters.
Our academy class is going home today because we know that SA matters.
SA matters!
If you like the show, please do me a solid favor and subscribe to the show. For the audio version, that's SA Matters Radio on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, or iHeartRadio. For the video version, subscribe to the SA Matters TV channel on YouTube. And if you find the show valuable, I would really appreciate if you would give the show a rating and write a review. Your ratings and reviews help others to find this show, and maybe even more importantly, it inspires me to keep up this labor of love. Since 2007, Situational Awareness Matters instructors have helped more than 1,300 organizations and have trained over 75,000 individuals to improve high-risk decision-making, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, highway workers, public transportation operators, aviation workers, oil refinery process operators, and more. If you work in a high-risk, high-consequence, decision-making environment, then we're here to help improve your safety and your survival, and to help you accomplish the most important mission of all, and that's to go home to the ones who love you.
I think Rich's ability to connect with any crowd, that's a gift that he has, and it's easily transferable.
This is the second or third time that I've heard him speak. There's some teeth to the information that he brings.
It's been really good. Good mixes. He knows when to throw in a joke here and there to get you back involved.
Some tools. I'm a new lieutenant, so very, very interesting. And some of these things I can take back to the station and use with some of the new firefighters I have on my crew.
Something to get you thinking about your job more, big picture type stuff. I've seen him before. A good review for sure.
I have heard him before, yes. After he speaks, there's usually an enlightenment because now they're more aware of what's going on around them and what they're experiencing as they respond to calls.
He's very, very knowledgeable. I'm enjoying it so far.
And that intuition, that's a big one. The video that he just showed up here, we're getting a lot out of this. I think this is a really good seminar, especially for new people and old. So I think it's very informative. This talk gives us more ammunition to do all three.
They're relatable to what we have experienced or very well could experience, so he makes it easy to let the knowledge sink in.
I mean, it's awesome. A lot of stories you can usually relate to yourself and calls you have been on, aha moment. Like, he just helps you focus on picking out the right things. It's awesome. It's a refresher and keeps my eyes open. It's good stuff.
If people listen to the message that he has, it's an incredible message delivered by a very compassionate person. Strategy and tactics are going to always change. situational awareness it doesn't change. It's always there.
He's got some good stories to tell, and he's very thorough with his stories, and it's interesting listening to him.
Very clear speaker, and he talks on our level because he's been there, he's been in the trenches. I think he's doing well, and I'm looking forward to the second half.
I'd like to take a moment to honor and thank the companies and organizations, agencies, and departments that have hosted recent Situational Awareness Matters training for their team members. The Syncrude Oil Refinery in Fort McMurray, Alberta. The Quad County Fire Chiefs Association in Lewiston, Idaho. The Pearland Fire Department in Pearland, Texas. The Toledo Fire Department in Toledo, Ohio. And the White Court Fire Department in White Court, Alberta, who hosted a live stream training for their members on their drill night where I came to them over the internet. If you're interested in where the upcoming programs are going to be, here's what's on the schedule. On February 2 and 3, we'll be at the Missouri Winter Fire School in Columbia, Missouri. Then I'm going to take a couple of weeks off to work on my business. I got some new and exciting things coming up. I just can't announce them yet, but they're going to be pretty darn cool. Then on February 22nd, I'll be at the West Virginia Emergency Services Conference in Pipestem, West Virginia. February 25th, I'll be at the International Falls Fire Department in International Falls, Minnesota. February 26th at the Grand Rapids Fire Department in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. February 27th, the Eveleth Fire Department in Eveleth, Minnesota. And February 28th, the Lutsen Fire Department in Lutsen, Minnesota. March 5 through 7 at the Baytown Fire Department in Baytown, Texas. March 8th, the Ponderosa Fire Department in Houston, Texas. And March 9th, the Northwest Volunteer Fire Department in Houston, Texas. On March 12th, the Maryland Fire Rescue Institute's National Fire Service Staff and Command Program in Towson, Maryland. And March 25 through April 3 at the Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard in Oahu, Hawaii. Oh, and if you're going to be at FDIC in April, look for me there on Thursday afternoon while I'll be presenting a situational awareness program. And I'm going to be doing a book signing too. That's probably going to be on Friday. So just swing by the books and videos booth and you'll see the schedule there. If you want to see the locations of all the upcoming events, just head over to the SAMatters.com website and click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage labeled Live Training Dates. And if you're interested in hosting a program, just click on the Contact Us tab on the top of the SAMatters.com homepage and I'll give you a call. If you want to become part of the SA Matters community of learners, there's a couple of ways you can do that. Check the show notes for how you can get connected. Check the show notes for how you can get connected with us on our monthly newsletters. Subscribe to the SA Matters podcast. Subscribe to the SA Matters YouTube channel. And how to follow us on the social media channels of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. There we're sharing ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 250 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you to our awesome sponsor, Midwest Fire. And if you're in the market for a pumper tanker, or a brush truck, check them out at MidwestFire.com. Thank you to our associate sponsor, Chief Miller. Thank you to all the companies, agencies, organizations, and associations that have hosted Situational Awareness Matters training programs. Thank you to all the organizations that have hosted a live stream training program where I come to your organization live via the internet to train your members. Thank you to the more than 2,500 students and graduates of the highly acclaimed Situational Awareness Matters Online Academy. The feedback that I've received from Academy graduates is nothing short of amazing and quite humbling. And thank you for that. I appreciate it. Most importantly, though, I want to thank you, the listeners and the viewers of this show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit SAMatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgassaway.com.